All right, we're live. Welcome to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bella Gamer, with my co-host Blue Boy.
Hello, hello.
And as you can see, we have a wonderful guest this week. So go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, my name is James Beck. I'm a Pathfinder freelancer, one of the founders of Eldritch Osiris Games, which is a workers co-op that specializes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and I'm very, very excited to be here. Like, beyond hyped.
Excited. Yeah, I see you all the time on Twitter, obviously, and I decided to bring you on, this week you were at Gen Con, first of all, which is, pretty huge. There's some big stuff for Pathfinder release at Gen Con, and I didn't get to be there this year. It was a very busy year for me. I just got a new house and trying to get everything set up. But also you're working on some projects as well, and strangely and appropriately, you have some mech related content, and I have some mech related content recently booming. So we'll get to all that here in just a little bit. We'll let some people filter in here from Twitch and YouTube. But before we get to any of that, how are y'all doing? How's life been for you guys? We'll start with you, James.
Busy. Turns out Kickstarters, I should have learned my lesson from the last one we did. Eat up a lot of time, and when we were doing the last one, we were a lot smaller, but also had a lot less projects going on in the background. And so it's been a fun juggling act this week of me working on like graphics, for instance, versus, and then, writing for projects that, we have also on the back end, making sure Mechfinder is like keeping up to date with all of our artists, the freelancers. So a lot of communication, very, very busy, but in a very, very fun way. It is, I will say Baldur's Gate 3 has eaten up more time from that than I planned it to be. I figured, hey, because I did the early playtest of it, the early access, and I was just like, you know what? I can get done with it, within like a week. It shouldn't be too hard. It's D&D 5e, so like combat, if it's with computers, it should be relatively streamlined and all this other stuff. It's eaten up a lot of time, I'm not gonna lie. As my friends and I have multiple times started at like 9 p.m. and ended at 4 a.m. Just trying to get into the next. I was committed to getting from level 4 to 5 just so I could get extra attack, so I could do more than one slice in a combat. And I think literally at one time we spent 6 hours just trying to get there because we kept doing all the dialogue trees and everything. So yeah, I will say that has eaten up so much more time than I planned for, but in all the correct ways, because I probably be taking more breaks like this in general.
I love how much of a universal constant Baldur's Gate 3 has disrupted so many people's like work schedules in this way. Because same, it's so fun. I had an issue last week where I really royally messed up recording audio for a video, so I just scrapped the entire project. And then I was like, dang, well, I'm too far ahead to record something else. I guess I play Baldur's Gate this week. Just I guess I'm taking a break now. Just Baldur's Gate time.
Yeah.
I don't regret it at all, but oh man.
Yeah, I put like 100 hours the first week of the game. It's nuts. I said a lot last week actually on Table Talk and as well in the video I made recently. It's just brilliantly done video game tabletop. Like, I said in the video that if it had Pathfinder's rule set, it would have been like way better. But also, people just don't seem to understand that. I'm not saying that a D&D property should be using Pathfinder's rules or should be Pathfinder for any reason other than I like the rule set. That's it. People just don't seem to understand that.
Well, we gotta get Baldur's Gate, 4, but using the Lancer rule set.
Lancer,
and then just completely throw in a good wrench.
Imagine a Baldur's Gate 3 level quality Lancer game. So good.
Oh man.
I've talked with Paizo people in the background. You know, I won't name names, but I have a feeling they don't have like I would guess at least $500 million lying around for that kind of development of a game.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Sadly. They just need to get a studio that's so invested and had such a wildly successful crowdfunded game beforehand that they can just pay for the IP and Paizo has to do no funding of their own.
Yeah, that's what Larian did.
The from what I've seen, Abomination Vaults looks really solid. And, you know, I know that's not technically using the Pathfinder 2e rules because it's a hack and slash, but it from what I've seen, it looks genuinely fun. Gallows Spires comes out in a month-ish, and that one's a roguelite, but in my opinion, as much as I would love to see like Pathfinder 2e, the tabletop, like come into a full video game, I'm extremely lazy. And thus having the like hack and slash of Abomination Vaults just appeals more to me in general. And maybe it's because I write for this game like every day, so having a little mix up is a little nice for me.
That's immensely fair, actually. It's one of those games where like I personally am not into the Diablo style, but then I keep seeing stuff that's like, this is what's going to be in the game. Oh yeah, there's like attack and spell mixing depending on who's in your squad, and I'm like, damn it, maybe I will. Maybe I will play this one.
I think it looks nice because it from what I've understood, it takes the teamwork aspect that 2e is so well known for, and it really brings it into that kind of genre. And I'll be honest, I haven't played a lot of Diablo. I've been playing Path of Exile because it's free. And I will admit I get cheap sometimes, and thus I will say it is nice to see that level of appreciation, I guess, when it comes to like understanding the source material of it's meant to be collaborative, it's meant to be teamwork, and then on top of that they have apparently built-in co-op, so that means 3 of my other friends are gonna get dragged into this whether they want to or not. It's gonna happen. I think. What I should have done was made the deal with them. If I play Baldur's Gate 3 with them, they have to play Abomination Vaults with me. And drag them into my world. See me gush about all the like, oh my god, this is named the Cloistered Cleric. This is perfect. You know, all the other stuff.
Yeah, jeez. It's been a good year for gaming. I've been eating well this year for games. We were playing Remnant 2 before Baldur's Gate came out, and then Baldur's Gate has been just consuming my life. And now Armored Core 6, I'm so stoked for. Yeah, that's the same like motion I made.
Yeah, I'm excited to play.
When I heard it at the what was announced? PAX?
It was like announced like I think PAX East.
I think it was PAX. Yeah, I was just like, yeah. First time in over a decade. Oh my god.
So here's what's funny. So to talk a little bit about Pathfinder-ish, I didn't know what Armored Core was until one of our I've been writing Pathfinder since January. I didn't know what Armored Core was until about February, March-ish, when one of my people that we work with, because I was one of our staff members, because we're all co-op, so just for people who don't know what that really is, everybody owns a portion of the company. This is not a centralized thing like, oh, James founded it, so they're CEO, and then they founded it with Sean, so they're CFO, CEO, whatever the other 3-letter acronyms are for the rest of them.
Right.
So what actually happens is a bunch of us each own a share in the company, and each of us have our roles. Some of us focus more on the art side, some of us focus more on the writing side, the editing, foundry development, and so on. So we have actually a collection of staff members that each own a good percentage of the company. It is because I really wanted a true democracy when it came to the workplace, because I've seen what happens when one person calls the shots on Twitter. And so this is a lot before Twitter, but and so one of our staff members, Aaron, was just like, James, you gotta check out Armored Core if you're gonna be writing a Beck game. I was like, oh, okay, sounds interesting. And then I booted up like a documentary that was on YouTube that was like an hour and a half just talk about each Armored Core game, and I'm just watching it all the way up through 5, and I'm just like, I gotta play this. This looks so good. And then they announced 6, and I was just like, yes. And then I got even more excited. And now that Armored Core 6 is coming out, I put like a portion of my last paycheck aside just so I'm like, I buy this game the day it goes out. I'm unbelievely excited for it.
Yeah, I played a bit of 4, but I played a metric ton of 5. It is so good back in the day now, because this game's old. And I've been asking... Go ahead, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I don't want to make you feel dated. I was way too young when the games came out.
Yeah, that's fair. That's just life now for me at this point. But I've been saying for years now, I want a good mech game. Because Mech Warrior is okay, but it's just a little bit too crunchy. Like the tabletop and the actual like video game itself is just a little bit more on the crunchy side of mech. I like a little bit more like one step to Gundam, but not all the way to Gundam. And Mech or Armored Core just hits that sweet spot for me really, really well. The mech combat looks good. 4 was it was super zippy, and like it was just you want to play swatting flies, the mech game, because that's exactly how it felt in the PvP scene. 5 was a lot more slowed down, but it felt really good, and it looks like 6 is gonna be a lot more dynamic in the mech frames. And not only that, but like the legs I'm super hyped for, because I love tank mechs. I don't know what it is, but I just love tank tread mechs. But there's never been a point to it other than they've just been for some reason really slow and their legs are extra armored, I guess, is what it was in prior games. Now, like, if you're playing a tank mech, you're really fast on the ground and you get a really good charge action that you can take as a tank mech. And I'm like, oh my god, I can make a gladiator style tank mech? That sounds sick. So I'm overhyped for that. And but yeah, that's kind of just one of the things about like tabletop is Lancer's a really, really good mech game. It's not a super good tabletop game because outside of the mech, it's just all narrative. It's rules light, all narrative. And I like rules light to like some degrees, but only in like bite-sized amounts. We're playing Monster of the Week right now, which is really, really fun. But when I'm playing Lancer, I'm like, when do we get into the mechs? Because that's when the game is supposed to be fun, and that's what you're building your character for and everything. Your pilot, even though your pilot skills are important for your mech, it doesn't help your pilot outside of the mech, ironically. So it just feels like everything is fluff in between. Some people like that. I like Pathfinder, how it does it, where your skills and your non-combat stuff are legitimately very important and matter a lot, and you can make a lot of character like decisions around what you want your skills to be. And Lancer, while you still can, and they have the custom skill actions you can take that you can use as well, your skill triggers. There's no bulk to that. It's just very surface level.
Well, then, do I have a product for you called Beckfinder?
Yeah.
That
was actually something we tried to Sorry, no, you go ahead.
As like, it's real quick. Just like as we were going through that, I was just downloading the demo PDF for Mechfinder because I was like, I'm curious because a few tabletops ago, I don't know when, we came up with the idea of what if we ran when Starfinder 2nd Edition comes out. Starfinder 2e and then have Lancer mechs in there so we can sometimes do Lancer combat alongside Starfinder. It's like that sounds sick.
It's one of the things I really enjoy about TTRPGs in general. It's something I really wish I kind of see more is using different systems in the same kind of overarching story to kind of tell what is best for that like story beat moment. So So, like, for instance, like, if you were doing, like, a mass combat that required whole nations to fight, like, drop what you're playing with D&D. Don't invent a whole new rule system. Just go pick up Risk, and then just pretend Mordor, you know, like, if you pull up the Lord of the Rings edition, like, Mordor, and, you know, you jump off of one ring into that, and then that's how you play out your different simulations.
Yeah, I love those ideas. There's, like, another thing that's been positive. I think people have done this, but it also just be a fun thing to do in general. If you have, like, a very in-person centered, like, group, where myself, I'm a big Warhammer 40K guy. And so
I love Warhammer.
It's my baby. I adore it. I thought it'd be such a fun idea. Like we theory crafted this idea of imagine having like the actual tabletop, be it either like a full-on actual 40K match or like Kill Team going on at the same time as like a Dark Heresy session, and they would impact each other in like certain situations. You break out into the war game and then you switch over to like a narrative tabletop game and just have that dynamic flow.
You're just jumping back and forth between Kill Team, Wrath and Glory, and then the actual war game itself. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Basically, like having elements like that of mixing and matching games instead of the thing you see all the time for 5th edition. How do I get this this setting and this system to work in 5th edition D&D?
Yeah.
Which I saw
obviously you port Cyberpunk Red into, you know, 5e.
I was gonna reference that. That tweet is so funny.
See, this is the crazy thing though, right? It's a good and bad thing. The D&D 5e homebrew craze, because the system it's just not complete, right? So people just have to make the rules. The interesting thing is, you know how many writers have gotten their start making D&D content, and how many have done actually very well, successful, like business-wise for it? On top of that, just how creative GMs are becoming running D&D 5e games, because they have to be. It's like the crucible of making great homebrew content. And out there somewhere, probably very little known, is like a really, really well-designed system. But, you know, it's all like patchwork together and stitched onto 5e, and you won't ever find it, because it's like, how do you differentiate your content from anyone else's? It's so conflicting, because on one side, I'm angry because WotC has just made an incomplete tabletop that's so successful, when there's games like Pathfinder that deserve way more of like the attention in the field, especially just for how the base game is made. But on the other hand, so many GMs and so many people have been made like so much more creative and are so like into tabletop because of those like gaps. So it's just kind of like it's like a double-edged sword. It's a terrible game, but it's made great players.
That honestly is a good representation for it. One of the things that, you know, if people are starting out with trying to learn like how to write for systems, reading how different systems interact with different types of themes and mechanics is a very good way of doing that. And unfortunately, that is like the crux with 5e, is just like it gives you just enough structure where you kind of get an idea of how to design for it, but you really got to put in the effort. It is something that I personally don't like when, you know, designing rules. Like with Mechfinder, I'm very, very particular about, I want this rule here because I want to support X, Y, and Z. You know, we had freelancers come onto the project early, and, you know, I really wanted to do relics because we don't see a lot of relics in, this is before Treasure Vault. So like, this is like, sorry, no, this was just after Treasure Vault, but not some, like, we didn't know fully, you know, how big it was, you know, all this other stuff. Not a lot of it was like fully publicly that we could say about what was in it. And so we brought in a friend to come in and write relics. His name's John Holmes. He's really, really cool. And so like I really wanted support for that, so we now have new relics into Mechfinder. one of the things that, we're working on right now as we are trying to finalize everything for a full demo. So we have the teaser demo, which kind of give you like some semblance of an idea, like a little bit about the universe, a little bit about the, at the time, core classes. Obviously now that's all getting mixed up with the remaster. No longer 12/8. And so one of the things we're doing now is solidifying, okay, these are the hardline rules we want. So, as I go into version 11, and I cannot believe we've had 10 iterations now going into 11 for Mechfinder, I wanted to stress, like, out of combat, when you're out of your mech, what does that look like? So we're currently, I don't want to say too much about it, but like we're currently working on a pilot class. So you have like every pilot has the pilot class, but the pilot class is, I don't want to say too much because like if I say, oh, it has the subclass where you get extra precision damage if you take the special action, and then it turns out we had to remove it for some reason. I don't want the one person who's to be like, oh man, I really wanted my rogue to be in there. And it's this really big design act when you're working on a project like this, or just anything related to tabletop. If you're getting into the writing space, is figure out how much rules do you want to support different themes, because you have to, it's this balancing act, because you want to work on it all, but at the same time you still need to deliver a product at the end of the day. So even Pathfinder 2 has this struggle where it's just like, we would really love to continue expanding on gadgets, like it was something that unfortunately had to get cut out of Treasure Vault, because when you're that big of a publisher, page count matters so much more than if you're a third party. And so you kind of just like play this game of, oh, we really want to add this, but we're low on page count. Oh, we had this idea, but we couldn't make it in time because X, Y, and Z, so we had to move it over here. It is one of the things that I feel like a lot of new writers, I especially had to learn this when I was first getting into this a few years ago, was knowing when you have the hard limit of just being like, I really want to work on this, but I can't because I still have to cross off other things on a checklist. And being a giant ADHD nerd does not help that at all.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's just a lot of it, this is why I had co-authors on this project, because it was too big for me to like focus all on my own. Because I'm like, one week I'm like, oh, I have this cool idea for a planet. What if it was all filled with fiends and they're all warring with each other? But like the demons were structured like social media. So whoever had the most amount of followers was reigning supreme, and they all had like their own social media app. And then the week after, I'm just like, oh man, but you know what I really need? More monsters. I need more creatures for when I go into my next playtest, so it feels more unique, and I'm not just dragging in a Pathfinder ball. Oh, you know what? Man, I had this idea for a cool archetype that specializes in missiles. I can't call it the Monarch. And then, and so knowing where, okay, I gotta focus on this section, or because this needs to get fleshed out, means I have to then admit, okay, monsters might gonna have to take their break for a little bit so I can finish this. So 5e kind of is super weird when you talk like base 5e versus like how much GMs have to go in to like fix stuff. Well, not fix, expand, whatever you want to call it. And so yeah, it's when you're first getting into it, it's kind of like that balancing act that you constantly have to maintain, and knowing where, okay, you have to stop is really important.
Yeah,
I just
sounds like
far too long.
No, you're fine. It's exactly why you're here, so we can show that off. And actually, speaking on, probably because people might not be familiar or with it. What exactly is it that you do? And please explain, like, what is Mechfinder for the audience?
I love talking about what I do. Okay, I specifically am a Pathfinder 2e freelancer. I have written for other systems before. When a friend needs something for D&D 5e, I can write it. But I like really focusing and playing in the sandbox that is known as Pathfinder. I've actually written for Paizo once for Lost Summons Firebrands. You can find The Fire's Finest and Passenger in that book, which was a really, really fun project to be working on. But a lot of my day does revolve around writing new Pathfinder content. We initially started a lot of stuff on Pathfinder Infinite, but we literally had such a large backlog that we just decided to start moving to other platforms, kind of start working on bigger stuff as the staff list kind of grew. As we kind of noticed, we had more development, like, there's different sections that kind of need to be expanded upon. We needed a made artist lead, because when it was just started, it was just me and my buddy Sean, who is Elder Streams Games, and it was just the two of us, so it was obviously only one of us could write, one of us could do the layout, get the art in it. And so as the team kind of expanded, we kind of went on, we started assigning more roles to people, we started taking on larger projects, and so we did our first Kickstarter back in November, which is currently wrapping up. The art for it is gorgeous. I'm so excited to show that off, because it is coming. The full book is an ideal by the end of this month, if not early September, before Mechfinder launches. But a lot of my day is managing the company, managing who we work with, because we love to work with tons of different creators. We love to work with other creators of our size, if not sometimes bigger. Like somebody we partner with often that you might find on Twitter is the Monday Monsters group. They're both the two people that run that show are both absolutely incredible. I love talking with them. I love hanging out with them whenever I get the chance. So a lot of my day is like layout, contract negotiation, making sure our payroll's all set, because somebody's got to make sure the money's flowing, to people's pockets, or else they don't get paid, and I get into trouble when you have to answer, because when it's a co-op, you don't answer to yourself, you answer to, in my case, 9 other big shareholders that each own an equal stake in the company. So they're like, hey, we need to get paid, please. And so it's managing that. It's managing upcoming releases. So a lot of my day kind of varies depending on, do we have a new book coming out? Are we developing on a project right now? Do I have a semblance of free time where I can go write something else? And I put that in quotes because my the staff mostly yells at me to stop writing so much so I could go take a break, mostly for dinner. But a lot of my day, because I genuinely have so much love and passion for the game, is playing in the sandbox that is Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And so I think literally on New Year's, I think my family went to bed because I'm 20. I still live with my family, and it's really nice, mostly for free room and board, and not having rent is nice. But I was sitting there. I don't even remember what I was watching. I was thinking about different ways to express Pathfinder, and I've debated this in my head for the last year or two. A lot of inspiration came from, how I'm sure people know that Dimension 20, how they have like 5e, but it's set in Candyland, so it's 5e in name only kind of thing, where we're using the 5e rule set, but it's in a setting we don't typically would presume 5e to be in. I was a big fan of Fantasy High, so one night, I don't even remember what I was watching. It's probably about like 2 a.m. I opened up a Word document on my laptop, and I just say, in the future, the adventurers are no more. And I literally for like the next hour was playing a game of what if high fantasy was in the mecha genre. And I've been playing Lancer for a while at that point, and so I knew what I was going into when it came to like mech expectations mostly. And so I remember yelling about this in our Discord. I'd just be like, oh my god, guys, I got the greatest idea. I typed out like this, like, you could actually kind of find it in the demo, which is the opening in a universe where, mechs rule, and, there's dragons that have modified themselves with cybernetic parts. There's the undead mechs. You kind of play that it was basically that whole intro was what I sent out to the staff. I was just like, I got this great idea, and and initially it was literally like, guys, just pretend you're in Mechs, okay? Play the barbarian class, but just pretend you're in a mech the whole time. It was originally supposed to be like 10 pages. That's all I wanted it to be. It was just, hey, play pretend for a few hours, right? Turns out, people really liked it in the company, but they also said, James, we're not playing pretend. Give us rules to go along with this. And so it kind of started as, okay, well, I kind of need a setting for this. So I texted my friends over at the Lost Caravan, specifically my friend Andrew, and I just set up this idea for this universe, and he helped me like flesh out what the big crux of it all was, and it was all centered around a new type of metal called Animus Ore, which is literally hell metal. It was really fun to like fully develop that out. And so Mechfinder started as this like just play pretend, and now I have Mechfinder open, like the master document I've been working out of for the playtests. It is currently sitting around 134 pages with a save count of 309.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I've been now granted, some of those pages are some of the propaganda art that we created with our internal graphics artists. When we do the full demo, when the Kickstarter page releases, that's when we decided we're going to do the full demo. You'll see some of the propaganda art if you check out like the get a summary of content. I know we've already linked it in chat, but if you go to the Mechfinder page on Eldritch Osiris Games, there is like you can find some of the propaganda art that we created, but it basically Mechfinder kind of just evolved, and now we have a full team working on it. We are already talking to freelancers about jumping onto the project once the Kickstarter goes, depending on how much we get. And then it was a lot of just like, well, we don't want this to only be for Pathfinder. We want this to be accessible, because I know people are fans of Lancer. I'm a big fan of Lancer. I'll be honest, still a Monarch sim all the way.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, okay, what if the universe was adaptable? You use different games to tell different stories in it. And so we then started to, we invented something called Snap, which is System Neutral Alternative Plug and Play. And basically it means, hey, use this universe, but use whatever system you want in it. Like feel free to take the idea of Mavet, which is the planet of the dead. It was created by an elven lich necromancer that killed a star, killed a living star, used that to create their soul cage, and then created a planet around it. So the core of the planet is literally a living soul that has been trapped in there by the lich. And so we're like, hey, if you really like that idea, use it. Go put it in your Starfinder game. Like it's there for you. If you want, go ahead and use that in your Lancer game. Feel free to like customize and play with this however you want it. So one of the things that we're keeping in mind as we're writing for it is, obviously we still want this to be Pathfinder oriented. It's our favorite game of all time. And but we wanted to stress that you can play this anywhere. And we're in the background right now. It's Starfighter 2. We kind of threw a little bit of a wrench, but a very good wrench into this. We were creating the Starfighter guide with one of the staff, Sam, who is really, really in tune with Starfinder. And then we're working on a Lancer guide. These are like small like product releases of just like, hey, this is like how we kind of picture adapting this into those systems. We would love to do, depending on how well the Kickstarter does, to then go back in and just be like, here's a full fleshed out supplement for Lancer. I'll admit I've written a few frames. I'm working with another freelancer to fix up some of the balance, because I haven't written for Lancer as much as I have written for Pathfinder. So Lancer balance, very, very different from Pathfinder balance. If you look at, math and such. But Mechfinder has kind of just evolved into this large project with a ton of really awesome creators all coming together to tell a story of what if high fantasy was in mechs. We wanted to answer the question of what if there are threats so large in the universe that there's nothing but a giant metal machine to stop them. Very much a what if Pacific Rim used dragons instead of kaiju. That was kind of where Mechfinder has started and like launched into. I know that I sent you some art of like
do you want me to show that now?
Oh yeah, let's show it off. I'm more than excited to talk about this one. I really wanted to stress like this project has gone such a far direction that it is insane to me that we're even at this level. Because like I said, it was meant to be 10 pages. It was never, when I first wrote it, it was meant to be, play pretend for a little bit, guys. You got this. And it blows my mind that we're even at the level of art we're at for it right now. Like our artist lead, Sebastian Hirsch, does a great job with all the iconics. We're trying to get an iconic for each class, and all the ones that we keep getting every month has been absolutely incredible. In the summary document, like we posted like a giant scene that was done of 3 iconics: the swashbuckler, the psychic, and the bard, all combating a bunch of homocula, mecha homocula actually. And so yeah, Mechfinder kind of serves this idea of wanting to use the tacticalness of Pathfinder 2nd Edition mixed with the beauty that is the mecha genre, because I'm a giant mech fan. I won't lie. It's always been a staple for me growing up. I watched Robotech. Pacific Rim was my Thursday night movie. Oh, is everything okay?
Yep, everything's good. Sorry. The image saved as a large JPEG, so.
Oh wait, hold on. Oh, okay, hold on. I could DM it to you.
I got it already. No worries. I just have to resave it.
No, you're good.
Go ahead, keep talking. I just had to hide the screen.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool. I didn't know if they could still hear us or not.
Yep, they can. You're good.
Okay, cool. So yeah, Pacific Rim was on every Thursday for Sci-Fi on the Sci-Fi channel. So I probably watched the movie maybe a couple hundred times. It's genuinely insane. But yeah, so Mechfinder answers the question of what if there are threats so large nothing else can stop it but a machine. And it's been a really fun setting to explore, because you have to introduce threats that are big enough to take on these level of machines. You can't have all protagonists. You gotta have something to combat them. And what I sent Bad Luck before all this was a image of a creature that you can find within the universe that is known as Arvaxum. And it's been quite interesting to see what happens when you need to design creatures that are at least 50 feet to 250 feet. And the whole crux of that is, how does society react when you have threats that are that big? Because in Pathfinder 2e, you have kaiju. Well, you can't fight kaiju in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Just spoiler alert, they're hazards. But in Mechfinder, you're meant to be able to fight them, It is very much of the Mecha Godzilla versus Godzilla trope.
I always highly respect the idea of some sci-fi, this future society that is like, how do we fight these big monsters? Do we build like really scary tanks, build a bomb big enough to kill it? Nah. Put me in a robot and I'm gonna punch it in the face. That's my answer, and I highly respect that.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, we were talking earlier. Oh yeah, here it is. Okay.
Ooh.
So this boy was written by one of our freelancers, PJ Baga, who works over at Nat 20 Productions, a giant friend of mine. This is the Mechs, designed by, the art specifically is by Le Luis de la Torre. I apologize every time if I mispronounce that. He is an artist out in Spain. He does a very good job with all of our art. You can find more of his art in Monstrous Beasts. But this is the Mechs. So a Mechs in Pathfinder 2e is a very dangerous three-headed creature that is basically a walking siege engine. They could destroy castles. If you just look up anything related to Mechs art in 2e, you could find them often destroying castle walls. And we said, hey, what if we had a Mechs, the siege engine, become 200 feet tall? What would it interact with then? What if we had a company called Runic Robotics, which is the arcane company of this universe, go in and experiment on a Mechs. And so thus the Mechs was born. It is this titan of a machine that is partially still living, partially machine, and it is genuinely terrifying. I don't know, this might be a little bit of just keep going with the niche references. This was partially inspired by Mecha King Ghidorah, because Mecha King Ghidorah has the one normal head and then the two cyber heads on the side of it. I've seen way too much Godzilla. All right, I can
no such thing. No such thing.
No such thing. But yeah, so this is like you guys are the first people to ever see this, publicly speaking. I really wanted to. I texted Bad Luck yesterday. I'm just like, hey, you want to show off some art that nobody's seen before? And I sent him a list, and he was just like, oh, show me this one. And I sent him over the Mechs. I'm just like, this is one of the cooler creatures we've ever had a chance to work on, and it came out amazing. And it was actually concept art from Monstrous Beasts, but we kind of felt like it didn't make sense to be in the Monstrous Beasts books. It was like in a really weird state, and we had Mech Fighter development, so I texted the leads, and I'm just like, hey, can I just steal it? Just put it into a project where it'll feel like it's at home. And we had the art for it already, and so we threw it over into Mechfinder, and it is absolutely incredible. We haven't fully statted out. It is, if you just give me like 1 second, I will tell you even the creature level for this, because it was such a nasty. It is a creature level 15. It has genuinely insane abilities, such as it can overcharge itself, it can pull people apart using different maw strikes. It has the same breath weapons, so you have one for acid, flame, and shock. It's got some nasty attacks, like its flame maw that has a plus 32, it has a reach of 20 feet, does 2d12 plus 17 piercing plus 3d4 fire. This is something you don't want to mess with, and our kind of rule of thumb for determining an average adventurer taking on something this size is this is a creature plus 10 in terms of relative threat level. So Mechs, and let's say you're just a Yoho Schmo wizard who just got out of his his school. He's really excited. He's got those curriculum spells. He's level 1, and he's just like, I can take on a Mechs. Yeah, that's a creature level 25. You're not fighting it. The idea is these threats are so big, nothing can stop them. And the Mechs is no threat that you just want to sleep on. The abilities that we gave it was really fun. Like I said, it was designed by Paul McGraw. He's such he's such a cool guy. An absolute hard worker on the team. You can find a lot of his work all over this project. His name's on the cover. But yeah, this is our Mechs. I'm super excited for it to make its full debut and home in Mechfinder.
that, you know, it's something you've been getting with this description that I've definitely immediately picked up when I was just paging through the demo. It does feel like a really interesting port of having, like, the world is still the same. It's still very Galarian or Pathfinder style. And the main aspect that, like, jumps out at me, is this, what makes it really interesting, is the fact that, like, how these mech frames are very based on your class. Like, I think it's super interesting how, like, champion and cleric is almost like, feels like a divine symbol. Like, a kind of symbol for your god. It's like the thing to channel your faith through. The specific line of bard, being, yeah, we kind of just decorate our mechs to express ourselves. Druid mechs are not built out of metal, they're built out of, like, wood and stone. So, like, stuff like that. It feels very, like, the still feels fantastical, but it's added a really interesting sci-fi element to it, which is a weakness of mine. I really like stealth sci-fi settings a lot.
We were talking about Warhammer earlier. Warhammer definitely played that factor of me, especially with the orcs in Warhammer, where it's still that, like, it's sci-fi, but it's still got those fantasy aspects. And one of the things, like, we really wanted to stress that we'll see when the full demo comes out is it's still, at the end of the day, Pathfinder. If you really enjoy Pathfinder, you're really going to enjoy the feel of this game. We're currently it's still being worked on, and, you know, obviously the Kickstarter is to make sure, like, hey, we want to keep building on this. You know, we like the idea of this setting so much that we want to keep getting more art for it. We want to keep getting more of a just constant development cycle with this. So, like, one of the things we're really proud of, and we mentioned Armored Core earlier, and I think if you're an Armored Core fan, you're going to recognize some of this. One of the things I can confirm that is going to be fully in the game is Build a Mech. What I dub Build a Mech. So you have two character sheets. As of right now, you have two character sheets. You have your pilot, and then you have your mech. Some of them share attributes. So, for instance, skills are consistent. If you're trained in something as a pilot, you're trained in it when you're in your mech. There's a full lore explanation called synchronization. It's basically you have to sync up with your mech, and thus your mech becomes you, kind of thing. This was our excuse for, like, I think the question was, okay, how do vampires work? And, you know, how does a vampire mech function? And so the idea is, oh, a vampire mech sinks its fangs into a mech and then feeds off of a sink. You know, feeds off of that energy and thus infecting you. If you think about it like Pacific Rim, you have the bridge, which connects the two pilots to the mech itself. And I thought that was a really, really cool concept, but obviously I can't steal that. So we went in a very magical route with it. And how each person interacts with the sink is very, very different depending on your class. It's basically our narrative way of just explaining, hey, how do you go from pilot to mech? You know, in Lancer, you just, like, jump in, and now you're going from your pilot sheet to your mech sheet. In Starfinder, it's going from pilot to your mech sheet. So we wanted to keep that theme. But Build a Mech specifically is you mix and match different parts to build out your ideal mech. For instance, my friend Dido was in chat earlier. I will shout out one of the mechs we did with the playtest. You have 14 mech points to start with, and so she spent 4 mech points on getting the tiny size. She got basic mobility for her mobility. She had natural weapon limbs, which cost 2 mech points as her limbs. She bought herself some hull, a good processor, and then a few systems. And basically the idea is you still get to, it's what we love with Pathfinder. It's the customization. So if you like the idea of Armored Core, where you're mixing different parts together, you're mixing in different systems, you're going to feel at home with Mechfinder. We really wanted to stress that your mech does feel different from your main pilot. And that's what we've been constantly trying to develop and keep building. As the time goes on, we have new archetypes specifically for Mechfinder. So if you wanted a little bit more of a archetype that focuses specifically on drones, you know, we have the Drone Swarm Master that uses various drones all around it to do different tasks. Actually, I've never said that one before publicly. Ha! Surprise! Spoiler.
It's okay.
New weapons like the Zeppo gun, because we really like I literally begged my team, was just like, I don't know how, but I want a gravity gun in the game. And over the course of like 30 minutes, we developed one. It was really, really cool. It's a fun combination weapon. So you could either use it as a melee or you could use it as a ranged weapon, depending on how you kind of felt in the moment. And so yeah, Sean developed Zeppo gun. It was really, really cool. And it has been, we really wanted people to feel like if you play Pathfinder, you're gonna know what you're kind of expecting with Mechfinder. You're expecting the tactfulness, the teamwork, the feats, the customization, and then keeping at home with a lot of stuff. So, we introduced some new spells. We're gonna introduce definitely new creatures to fight. We showed off the Mechrati earlier, but like we have other creatures such as the Titan Dragon, the Mecha Lich, even just basic ones, like basic type of stuff, like the Scatter Drone, which was designed by a Paizo employee. Well, it wasn't a Paizo employee at the time, but now I can say it. Joshua Birdsong, who's a designer over at Paizo, helped work on Mechfinder in its beginning stages. Like Junker Crabs. It's got a ton of new stuff. So one of the things we really liked the idea of was making you feel like you were still playing in a Pathfinder-ish realm when it came to the Pathfinder / D&D 5e feel of it. And so one of the things we did, like you mentioned earlier, was your mech is your class. Like, effectively speaking, obviously we have the pilot class, which make your pilot feel a little bit more unique from your actual mech. But, you gotta hop in that barbarian frame. You gotta perform all of the actions that, a barbarian would while you're inside of the mech. And the idea was that Pacific Rim feel of you have to still act. It's not, there's a line that we specifically put into the lore of early mech development was sitting there and press buttons. If you were the fighter frame, you would hit a button called power attack, and it would obviously do the power attack. You'd hit sudden charge if you're the barbarian. And then when synchronization was developed, it meant you actually kind of needed a little bit more skill. We moved from fighter jet pilots to actually having to be athletes. And we kind of get to explore this idea of that transition into needing to perform, and thus you became, your mech became the class. That's what people specialize in. That's what the companies are founded on. Like Apotheon is designed around being divine. It's all about being this divine space. So you have, the champion, their proudest of their champions, their sorcerers, their oracles, their witches. Whereas a company like Runic Robotics, they have brand deals with certain, powerful arcane creatures. So they can become patrons to their pilots. The idea that we really like, a small line that I added that I was really, really proud of was the fact that if you make a brand deal with Runic Robotics, you gotta have to get an arcane sigil inscribed onto your body. So you then become a walking branding license, essentially. So it's like, what if the Nike Just Do It was plastered onto everything and everywhere all at once? And so the idea is like, oh, you have a Runic Robotic mech? And then, just like slap on the sticker of Runic Robotics. It's kind of getting to play with this idea that it's fantasy in space. We really, it is what it's trying to deliver on. And I think, in my personal opinion, it does a very, very good job of making sure you got your Kunrasu, you got the Golemas, you got the weird stuff that we love in Pathfinder. And as Starfinder 2e comes out, we're getting even more compatible stuff. I'm really, really excited for. Obviously, I have no idea what's going to be in Starfinder 2e. I've begged Jenny Jabarski when I was at Gen Con to give me any information whatsoever. And she gave me a grin of, I can't tell you, but it's going to be good. And I'm kind of going off of that assumption. And so, yeah, we really like that idea of keeping your mech is your class. That was kind of something that we really wanted to stress. When you're outside of your mech, you might want to focus on your more barbarian tendencies. We have a subclass that is for martial users for the pilot right now. And so, like, if you wanted to, like, oh man, while I'm outside my mech, I really want to keep feeling that barbarian rush. I still want that rage, the adrenaline. Well, we made sure that was like a thing you could do. And over the last few weeks, been exploring that concept and that idea. And so far, I think, in my opinion, it's worked out really, really well. And I'm very, very excited to just keep seeing this project develop as we get more freelancers onto the project and kind of get to explore this space a lot more.
I have a question, and zero judgment if the answer is already, like, it's not planned, not gonna happen, whatever. As I talked to you briefly before the stream, I'm not a big mech guy, but I have exceptions. One of these exceptions is Titanfall. Am I in any way going to be able to do some fun combos outside my mech as a pilot while my mech is also doing cool shit? Like rodeo jumping.
Well, to keep going with spoilers, I guess, because I'm not going to stop. One of the things we have is variant rules. We know how big variant rules are at Pathfinder, called Free Archetype. And we wanted to keep that theme going. So if you are a big fan of Titanfall, as part of studying for this game, we looked at different ways mechs have been expressed throughout history in different mediums. There is small mode. So if you are not a fan of the 200, the 50 foot to 250 foot range of a mech, and you would rather have your mech fight alongside you, we have rules for small mode. And so if you wanted to perform that kind of jockeying, you absolutely can. There's, if you don't mind, I could read out a little bit of what small mode has to entail. Just so you get a better idea of it.
If you're willing to leak that.
Okay. Oh, I'm always down to leak stuff. They can't. I told the company ahead of time. Now that the project's announced, there's no stopping the leaks. They had to hold me back earlier in the project development because I was so tempted to keep yelling all my ideas out onto Twitter, and they were just like, James, we love you. This needs to be edited first before you could say anything. We still need a plan. And now we have a plan, and they can't stop. So that being said, I'm going to keep leaking stuff. So small mode, this is one section from it. We have rules for small mode scaling, speed on a 10-foot map, reach on a 10-foot map, because, it depends on how big or small you kind of wanted to make your maps for it. It depends. But fighting alongside a mech. It is not uncommon to see a mech fight alongside a pilot. A mech has the minion trait, and you can use an action to command your mech. While you're outside of your mech has amount of HP equal to half your HP with an amount of hardness equal to your level. You can only use basic actions while outside of your mech or cast innate spells. Once you resync with your mech, you gain access to all spells and abilities again. So this has a few more clarifying lines after it, but basically meaning when you're outside of it, you can only use your pilot abilities that you might have gotten from your pilot class. But your mech, you could command your mech, and your mech could still perform. If let's say you're a fighter, right? Your mech is a fighter. You are a marksman pilot, right? You can then use an action to command your mech, and your mech gets two actions as per the command rules. They can go power attack because they have the feat for it. They can go sudden charge. Anything that requires two actions, they can do. The idea is that Titanfall feel where you are outside your mech, you're doing your wall jumps, you got your big gun alongside of you, and then your mech is over there doing cool stuff. But if you wanted to, you could spend 3 actions, hop right back inside your mech, boom, now you're onto your mech character sheet once more, and you're just blasting people away using all your cool fighter abilities. Or in my case, rolling like garbage for the next 2 hours. For a game that's so mathematically tight, it does not account for players who cannot roll higher than 5. And the fighter class, I can't tell you how many times I've missed on a class that's supposed to be known for critting, and it hurts some days.
Yeah. It really does sound like it's, I think, a good mech, like anything, whether it's like media, whether it's like gaming or anything like that, is something that takes that step beyond futuristic sci-fi and kind of adds a little something extra. Lancer does it really well. There's a bunch of unknown quantities. There's a bunch of like quantum physics they start bringing into question. There's the idea that AI or things that are like close to AI have a true consciousness. Like, I like the Hydra, the concept behind the Hydra, because it's like drones just sometimes gather together in like whatever they're in, and we don't know why. There's some
the math demons that are known as NHPs that will literally destroy the universe if you do not reset them every 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, and the same thing happens as well in Evangelion, which is mixing not only like biologicals with mechs, but also concepts that go even further beyond, like even going in religious tones, or these concepts of like stepping outside of the bounds of reality, and where thought forms and all this kind of stuff can alter and change, and biology and or organic or inorganic are interchangeable in certain circumstances. That's what I think a really good mech, like anything, works really well. And it sounds like this idea of it's magic and mechs, but the magic is techno magic. You know, you can use magic for your machinery, and I'm sure you guys have also some other things that kind of start bridging those gaps between what's a mech, what's not a mech. And I mean, if you do Pacific Rim, there's gotta be some stuff like that.
If you're a fan of that, you would like the Occult Forge, which is a company, the Outer Forge, which is all about the occult, and it's really about exploring that idea of what is technically magic and what is technically a machine at this point. And for instance, they pioneer something called dream spinning, which is connecting emotions to a mech. It's connecting, you're using your emotions to essentially build a mech. You're exploring yourself, because the occult in Pathfinder is not your typical occult. I think Secrets of Magic does a good job of explaining that no, occult magic does not always just mean eldritch tentacles. It means the expression of a journey. It is a expression of yourself and oneself. And Luigi, who is a massive occult fan in the company, really stressed that at home when I was writing the Outer Forge, and they played a very good role in exploring that with me. But dream spinning essentially is your mech is kind of intrinsically out there. Like, you might have your mech literally shift parts, like as it's constantly moving. Like, it's like a fluid magic system. Whereas other companies such as Grisgorp and Rakis uses like typical. Grisgorp and Rakis represents the martial classes, the thaumaturges, your rangers, rogues, whatnot. Where they're like, no, your machine is metal. It is made out of alchemical products that we have put into it to make sure it functions and it works properly. And the Outer Forge is just like, bro, if we all just like get along and we express ourselves, we just have 50-foot structures lying around now. It's obviously a little bit more in depth. I've simplified this section a lot just to be kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, but the idea is definitely that we don't know what's not a mech, but we also know what is a mech, but maybe they're both right? Question mark. And it kind of gets to explore that. And one of the creatures we wrote, we don't have art for this yet. One of the creatures I wrote last week on a dare, well, not on a dare, it was a dare to myself because I wanted to see if I could do it, was called the Living Mech, which is mech made out of like flesh and bone kind of stuff. I have a full detailed lore on it. It is probably one of the more cursed things I have written for this project. If you are not comfortable with that, I'm not going to go into too much detail because I know that might be triggering to some. Because I have to simplify a lot. Obviously, there's a lot more nuance in the actual stat block itself. and on the creature, but it is asking that question of what technically would constitute a mech at this point, because the undead control mechs. Dragons might be in a mech, but dragons also enhance themselves cybernetically at this point. They keep their hordes constantly built inside of them. When we, just to keep going with spoilers, because I just love talking about it, we invented a whole new plane of existence called the cyberplane. Technically, its real name is Cyberalis, but it basically is what if the internet manifested itself into a plane of existence. And you can go to there, and it's this really out there world of, there is like constantly structures being designed and then destroyed. It is like what if the internet was a thing you can go visit. And so there are inhabitants of the cyberplane. There's the Hunger. Sorry, no, the Hunger was cut off from the cyberplane. But there are cyber dragons, beings made of pure digital space. We showed this off on the presentation, but there are Titan dragons, which Titan dragons are what if dragons were scaled up to be the size of mechs, because we kind of needed to use a lot of the questions in the early days was, how do we get X thing to be X size? And so Titan dragons are like kaiju level mechs. They are very, very big and very, very strong. And there is a ruler of the cyberplane, one of the rulers, called Angrus. I describe him lovingly as, what if Elon Musk decided to rule over a whole digital space that was like, instead of just Twitter, it was an entire realm. And we had to explore some like really, really cool options with that kind of stuff. And a lot of it is tackling those kind of themes of what even is what do we define as reality? What are our definitions are kind of failing right now. And, we kind of saw this a little bit in the remaster, actually, of Pathfinder with the removal of spell schools. Because before we had the remaster, and I know we've talked about this privately, we had enchantment, we had the necromancy school, the divination, transmutation, but a lot of spells kind of just sit in there and just be like, this could technically go either way and technically still be correct. It's one of the things I really liked about Seekers of Magic. The opening chapter 1 is, these are kind of arbitrary lines that we have created to maybe define a concept. And we really like that idea. It's something I love to keep exploring as I keep writing, of a lot of things are really arbitrary when you take any amount of time to really sit and think about them. And it's where that bridge is kind of gone in terms of Pathfinder. It's something that I keep stressing to the freelancers anytime they come on to the project, and just like, if you think an idea is too out there, trust me, I've written something far worse. So go wild. Like, I'm gonna keep spoiling things, but it's so much fun to keep doing it. There is a creature that I wrote because I sat there and I'm just like, what is a cursed idea? And I've been playing a game called Exoprimal, which, for those who don't know, it's dinosaurs versus mechs. It is so much fun. This ate up my time right before Baldur's Gate did. And so I wrote something called the Radioactive Tyrannosaurus Swarm, meaning it is a group of T-Rexes that have all kind of created a swarm together that will overrun mechs. And they're all radioactive, and they're very, very cool. But we get to kind of just like play in this weird cursed space, I guess, of just be like, we still want high fantasy. We still want that sense of, you could maybe see this in Pathfinder. And if people really, really want it, they could take something like the Mech stat block, which, like I said, is level 15. If you wanted to, you can just smush that down to normal size. It follows the same structure and rules. So, it's a gargantuan creature. So if you wanted to, you could take it. Now it's a 20 foot by 20 foot creature and just have normal people fight it. If you really wanted to tell, like, Iron Gods is a great example of this. of wanting to take sci-fi elements and put them into Fantasyland. Numeria is my favorite area of all of Galarian, and you can find that expressed in a lot of my writings, namely for Lost Omens Firebrands. And you could take stuff like that. You could take the basic bomber mech, which is, I believe, level -1. Maybe it's level 0. And you can just throw it in there. It's a medium creature. It just has some sci-fi elements to it. I think it's something that, if I had a theory craft for Starfinder 2e, that's kind of like what the idea is going to be. In that sense of, you could take the stat block and hypothetically throw it onto Galarian. You, the game master, have to judge how that's going to work in general, but like, nothing's stopping you. And that's kind of the thing that we wanted to keep consistent in this supplement. And like I said, right now 134 pages, and it's still growing by the day.
At this point, I'm surprised it's only 134 pages.
Honestly.
It's gonna be large. My ideal right now is 200 pages with the Kickstarter. I would really like to keep expanding upon the concepts that we have going on here, because I think this is something that's really, really unique. I've seen other like fantasy mecha stuff. They're all great. I've been really, really excited. I've been following up one that's called Aether Nexus, which uses a different system but kind of explores that idea. And I think I really wanted to go big. I call this my most ambitious project I've ever had the chance to work on. And I would put this above opening Eldritch Tires games. Like, this has been the most insane project I've ever had a chance to take lead on. And I was a lead developer for Monstrous Beasts, but that was very much sticking within the realm of Pathfinder 2e of just like, we want to expand animal companions, we want to make a bunch of do stat blocks for monsters, we want to do a lot more with these equipments and spells and stories that we just haven't gotten a chance to explore yet for whatever reason. Mechfinder has been, well, we got to develop a setting for it, we got to develop new creatures for it, we got to make sure we're hitting all these narrative beats, because Pathfinder, I call it a comic book at this point. It is a comic book, anime, JRPG feeling game. Cloud jump is literally a feat where you could jump an insane distance because you can. It's cartoony. Look at Sniping Duo. The last feat for Sniping Duo is literally like a slapstick comedy of, you shot one thing and then the bullet ricocheted, it hit the water tower, and then that caused a giant flood, which made all the goblins get pushed down the river. But, that accidentally slammed into the sheriff's building, and now, that's overrun and flooded, which accidentally let down the caper, loosened the bars just enough for whatever creature to slip loose. So Pathfinder in my head has always been this, like, over the tops, game. It is as grounded as you really want it to be, but then you look at some feats like Black Powder Boost, and you're just like, nah, this is a video game. People had way too much fun, and maybe it's because I've spent a lot of time talking with the Pathfinder developers just as the time has gone by. I could tell like people like Michael J. Sayer are a massive like fan of that like thought process of Pathfinder is a video game where you can kind of do wherever you want and tell the kind of stories you want to tell. And we really wanted to keep that in Mechfinder. You could have it as grounded in mechs as you want it to be. You could have it out there as far into Fantasyland as you want it to go. I really wanted you to have that sliding scale. And we represent that with variant rules. We represent that with actual new spells that got added, the new archetypes. And it has been, like I've said a dozen times, but I'll keep saying it, it's been an absolute joyride to just let my mind go crazy with it. I keep asking everybody at the company, I'm just like, why has no one told me no yet? Please make my brain stop. I keep thinking of new things to add that are too cool not to put into the book. So yeah, I agree. It is surprising it's only at 134 pages, but it is also missing like the last 20 stat blocks I've written for creatures. And it has been such a wild ride to be on. And ever since January, it has been this constant machine of writing from me. And I think this is such a fun niche I didn't know I wanted to explore until I started working on it. And it's insane. It's so crazy to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely it's always fascinating to hear on this side because I've done some done makes it sound like it was voluntary. To make Anima Beyond Fantasy work, I had to remake the game. And I ran D&D 5e for a good number of years. I actually met my fiance running Adventures League, funny enough. And it's just one of those games where once you get into it deep enough, there's just nothing there. The game hasn't fully loaded yet. So you gotta build all that stuff. And hearing from people who enjoy that kind of thing as like, oh yeah, I love making a whole bunch of stuff. And especially coming from a background of me going, well, that doesn't work because there's literally like, there's a spell in Anima that says it makes the floor slippery. There's no rule. It doesn't tell you what it does. The floor is just slippery. There's not even rules in the game about what an uneven surface is. So you just have to make it up in a game that uses percentile dice and uses division for allocating damage or multiplication sometimes. So, you know, it's definitely fun to listen to, and and you mentioned it a little bit earlier as well. It's actually really funny how this stream came to be because one day James just messaged me about one of my videos where I was talking about the changes to curriculum and all that kind of stuff, and you know, we had a very civil argument about what was going on. It wasn't really an argument as much as
it was just more like, hey, could you like, I was really trying to stress when I'm going into it. I'm just like, hey, I promise this is not the, like, I don't mean shade or anything like that. You know, I don't want you to feel offended, but like, it was clarifying like a few things because, you know, when you're talking about the remaster, when you say school spell, it's just like, oh god, this refers to 6 different concepts all at once.
Exactly, yeah. In the video, I said I was talking about spell schools and how I didn't like how they're removing spell schools because it adds a framework. But the thing is, it's also a wizard class feature called spell schools. So yeah. When everyone was just like, you don't like the new curriculum? I'm like, no, I like the new curriculum. I just don't like that they removed spell schools. And they're like, so you don't like the curriculum? No, it was just how it was. I had this huge conversation in that video with the rules lawyer as well. Actually, we had this big comment thread about talking about the concepts around it. And like, I like curriculum. For anyone who hasn't seen my video since then, I like curriculum. I like the ideas behind it. Heck, I like curriculum even if it's just, hey, this curriculum, these are the extra spells you can take. If you don't allow any extra choices beyond that, because I mean, that's like what other classes get anyway. Like if you're a sorcerer or if you're a cleric, you get extra spells added to your spell list that you can select, and it's like 3. And there's not this concept of, oh, pick whatever. That's I think it's fine how it is. I just didn't like the removing of spell schools because it adds structure. Even if conceptually I understand some spells just might not fit it 100% into whatever school they were, I also agree it's arbitrary, but it adds structure nonetheless. People can just be like, oh, you like battle magic, pick evocation or abjuration spell, and you select from 2 lists. That's really easy to do, rather than something vague like, what does the word befuddle mean? I have people in my friend group who don't even know what the word befuddle means. So picking a spell that's similar to befuddle the minds requires someone to understand what even the word befuddle means. And to some people, I understand that's ridiculous that they don't know what befuddle means. But it's just, there's people out there, you know.
Words are hard.
Words are hard. Yeah, Mr. Julien's over here.
It's not a word.
You're talking about like someone being Juliended, and he's just like, "What the hell is Juliended?"
No, like... the problem. No. The problem is that we were doing like we all had like a live play game. We were doing. Everyone had webcams on. Some Cam describes like walking into monofilament wire that's basically blocking a doorway. If you walk through, you'll just get sliced up. And like the character walks in slightly, gets like their face slightly marked, and then quickly steps back. And then Cam's like, oh, it's kind of like a julienne cut. And then everybody nods sagely. It's like, yes, of course. And then there's me, like, you made that up. What the fuck does that mean? No, because
that's one of the things we Google in the background and just be like, what does julienne mean?
Like, the problem is, I also have this issue. I don't know if it might track for other people, where if I hear a word I like genuinely don't understand, like I've never heard of before, it doesn't process. So I'm like,
oh, that makes sense.
Couldn't repeat what that word is. Where it's like, I couldn't even type, I can't type in and spell it because I just heard gibberish. And I'm like, everyone just acted like they understood what that meant.
But yeah. Sorry, keep going.
Well,
no,
okay.
I was just like, yeah, dude, you keep giving context.
Okay, so I mean, like, and that's the thing, right? I'm 100% okay with anyone coming to me and being like, I disagree. I'll be like, cool, let's have a dialogue. I'm more than happy to talk about it and to like flesh it out. And I understandably, that video is confusing in some contexts because Spell Schools just refers to a class feature and a class, and when you're talking about both simultaneously, it just gets confusing. So I completely understand. I had someone in a recent video as well just be like, it sounds like you're talking about bleed stacking, and I rewatched the video and I was like, no, I said they don't stack, but then I immediately said, unless you do this, which is very contradictory in itself. And what I was trying to say was the wounding rune is what I was talking about. You can go from a D6 to a D12 if you crit. They don't stack, you can just upgrade, and upgrade is what I should have said rather than unless. And words are hard, you know, and a lot of my videos are very freeform because I don't have a structured mind. I don't do well on scripts. I struggle. So I'll do well like a backbone of a script, and then I'll talk off of that. And usually it's always just like a phrase or a word, and when you take it into context, because later in the very same part I talk about how it's not as good because the best you could do is hope to like upgrade the damage, yada yada yada. So like in the context of the sentence, it makes sense and it can be understood. But if you get caught, if you stop listening partway through because you're like, that's wrong, and you're thinking to yourself, that's wrong, and you're not listening to the rest of what's being said, that happens a lot. And so we were just talking, and then I was just like, hey, you know what? Thanks for chatting like this, and you know, going through this. It wasn't even an argument, like I said, it was just a clarification. Do you want to come and chat on TableTalk? Because I'm always so happy to talk to anyone about tabletop in general, but to bring people on the show, one of the things I wanted to do with the channel specifically, I've said this many times before, but is to bring parts of the community together. And I'm very glad that a lot of other people in the Pathfinder space are kind of doing something similar. You got Knights of Last Call who have been doing it somewhat. You have Roll for Combat who have been doing it somewhat. And, you know, unfortunately, YouTube is just a thing of numbers. If you don't have a big enough number, people don't give you enough time. And it's not by any means shade on the individual or like even a pettiness. It's literally just like you need to prioritize things. You have work you could be doing, or you could show up on a channel with like under 10k subs, you know.
I mean, I got that. I mean, like I'll talk a little bit about my background. I used to work with Deadly D8 back when that was like a big channel. That was a channel when that used to be around on YouTube. So like, I totally love talking with people regardless of how big or small the size is. I've been watching, like I said, when I was talking with you on that initial conversation, like I've watched you for a while now. You know, like that's why I was like going into the conversation of like, I respect the hell out of you. What did you mean by this?
Yeah.
I still think the removing spell schools was also really a good idea, broadly, because it led to one OGL, because you know you gotta get
I understand that
some of that. But two, it does lead into some weird arbitrary stuff when you take time to start thinking about some stuff. Like for example, incarnate spells. Well, some incarnate spells can do healing. Does that mean it's a necromancy school? But you gotta summon something. So is that a conjuration spell? Spells with multiple effects kind of hit that level, and it's something I really enjoy about what I've seen from the remaster, and namely in Rage of Elements and preview. I don't have any more information than anybody else does right now, unfortunately. I really wish I had, an advanced copy of the remaster, cough by Zoe. But for what I've seen and what I said to you in private was, I think ultimately it's going to lead to a much more healthier expression of the game, because we're going to see a lot more nuanced stuff. You could have something like Summon Healing Servitor, which is an Incarnate spell that does healing. Well, you can just give it the healing trait, call it a day. You don't need to worry about the conjuration stuff. But you're right, it does. When you're removing a classification, it makes certain things difficult if you're trying to go for a specific concept. One of the things like we talked about in private was like, okay, so if I wanted to have something that only summons, there's no conjuration tag. You got to go through the spell page, probably on Archives and Mathis, being realistic.
Yeah.
And try to find anything that has the word summon in it. Like Alt F4ing, just F4ing in general. Just try to find something in there. And sorry, Control F. I can talk. And
it's fine, no worries.
It is a mixed bag. We talked about this in private, but it is the mixed bag of just be like, you get some downsides, but you get some upsides to go along with it. I think when we're talking, the idea of the curriculums make that a lot easier. If you're going, typically speaking, if you're trying to go for a specific type of mage, Wizard's the one you go down that route, because of the way that the schools are now set up. It's just like, you wanted a battle mage. Well, you have the School of Battle Magic that, will give you the spells that are most appropriate for that, with obviously now structured like how Sorcerer or Witch is now structured.
Right.
Of giving you those additional spells. Overall, I think it was a good change coming in the remaster, just to one kind of push Pathfinder's unique brand. Kind of like, I'd love to get to the day when I describe Pathfinder to the average new person as, it's like D&D, and just not have to say that first phrase. Is just like, it's a high fantasy role-playing game that was like, I don't even say inspired by Dungeons and Dragons anymore. And so far for the remaster, and I think we could both agree on it, it's looking great.
Yeah,
I'm in love with everything.
I like the remaster for a lot of things, and if anything, it's just like, I liked the extra structure, and I already said earlier, I agree that some of the classifications are arbitrary, but it's fine that they're arbitrary, because it's arbitrariness in the sake of making things simple. But I agree as well, conceptually, and from the perspective of immersive lore, for instance, you don't need to ask a dumb question like, I hate how in D&D healing is an evocation,
it's an evocation. I cast Healing Word and it's an evocation spell. I'm like, it's not
yeah,
blasting
right.
things.
So I totally understand, and I 100% agree that conceptually speaking, it's just one of those things. But arbitrary as it was easy to give a player a list of spells in a category and be like, here, pick one, because that is just inarguably easier. But immersive, and this is kind of one of those kind of arguments that has layers dependent on perspective, because while some people are like, but I want a game that has a lot more immersive, that makes it a lot more sense to me, another person is like, I want a game that has more guardrails. I want a game that is very easy to put someone on the track and they can't mess up because there's that track there. And I think both are valid for sure. And again, it's an opinion, and you can have your own opinions about anything. It's like it's like people who don't like the idea of monk in tabletop. There's a surprising number of them who are just like, I don't like the fantasy of monk. Why would I ever go and buy a sword if my fist can do the same damage as a sword? And it's like, that's not what it is. That's not what being a monk is. It's years of training, or picking a sword up and slashing someone with a sword. People think that the idea of monk breaks fantasy, and I also agree. I agree with you as well. I love high fantasy. I love anime.
At that point, like, Thaumaturge is just like, why don't I just pick up this holy symbol and then they get weakness equal to my level, you know, anytime I try to punch them. Like, it's one of those, like, I don't agree on the monk thing. I like monk where it is. I like the idea of perfecting oneself and one body. It is a really fun niche, and I've never agreed with the, well, I could just pick up a sword and I'm just as good as a level 1 monk. I'm like, no, stop it. That's bad story writing. That's lazy.
I've never understood the position some people can have where they can hear, I'm playing a monk. I walked up to the dragon in its lair. I roundhouse kicked it in the face, and it took a lot of damage. And then someone's like, "That's lame." It's like, what? Are we playing the same game? That's the coolest shit ever.
And then they're cool with, like, oh yeah, but the wizard literally destroyed a dimension just to cast, you know, fireball at a really high level. They're like, that's realistic. No. The fireball was the realistic part. But a guy with a fist punching somebody to death, no, that's not real.
I mean, it's just game feel, right? Because there's a lot of people who like the OSR style, dungeon crawl classics. They like the more nitty gritty. The game is hard. Living in this world is hard, and they want that high kind of. They want the idea that if you do survive, this is a big, like, desync between some styles of gamers. I'm not even gonna say like grognards versus non-grognards, because there's tons of grognards who like Pathfinder 2nd edition the way it is. There's some people who want a grim dark style tabletop where their character is not guaranteed to survive towards the end of it, and they want to know that if their character does survive, it's for a good reason, rather than a lot of people, I think the majority at this point, who are just like, I want to tell a really cool story that has all these deep elements and have characters that can do, like, fantastical things, because that's fun. It's legitimately fun to have a character who can leap onto a building, or who can leap off of a building and not twist their ankle, because, you know, you're past your prime, or you're not a kid anymore, you can not just bounce back.
And I think that, like, broadly speaking, that is just, I think it's something that kind of, I will admit, I'm semi new to the, if we were talking about, like, talking tabletop industry as a whole, I'm definitely on the new side of writers. I've only been doing this for a few years. It is something, like, I'm perpetually trying to work on, trying to get better. But one of those things that you kind of learn when you're going into the writing game, if that is something people are ever interested in, or even just storytelling, you know, finding games that best suit the story you're trying to tell is the ultimate thing. So, like, if you're going into Pathfinder 2nd edition expecting that, you know, OSR feel of just being like, I could die at any moment. I have 12 hit points as a level 7 fighter. And, you know, a skeleton could one-shot me. It's just like, you don't want to play Pathfinder. Pathfinder 2e is objectively a high-power combat simulator where, you know, you are, by level 5, like, this is something we had we kind of wanted to explore in Mech Finder. And it's something that I've been grappling with for a while is, realistically, if you are a normal person, and you see a level 5 adventurer, that should be, like, almost close to a demigod. If we're thinking about it in normal people's perspective, the average person is not an adventurer. The average person is maybe a level, like, no, literally level 0. A commoner in Pathfinder 2nd edition, level 0. You should not do it. You are Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. You are not Luke Skywalker. You know, that is kind of the mindset you're going into. So if you're looking at a level 5 character in terms of Pathfinder, it is a very stark difference. And, like, if you talk about it, like, if, like, in terms of grit, you know, if you think about it for long enough, a level 20 fighter could never even get hit, even in their sleep, by a million -1 goblin. Just mathematically speaking, even if they rolled a nat 20, that's still failing, just because of the way math works in the game. And one of the things that, you know, if you're going for that gritty style, Pathfinder is not the game for you. Like, you could homebrew it. There are ways of doing it. I think a proficiency without level does a good job of scaling some of those expectations back. But realistically speaking, play 13th Age, I believe, is a better game. Play a Dungeons & Dragons, a D&D. You know, like there's a million systems out there that are doing the storytelling you want better than Pathfinder, better than D&D. I'd even argue D&D 5e, 4e, and 3e are all those high-power fantasy simulators, especially first edition Pathfinder. I have seen the level of BS you can get away with at some levels, especially if you min-max.
Well, and see, and that's the thing though, is that it was hard to get to those levels because people from who played like first edition were like, I would go into my sessions with 3 extra character sheets because it was very likely my character was going to die that day. And, you know, you were constantly like getting to level 3 and then dying and restarting pretty much over and over and over.
I played Reign of Winter. From what I've understood, is supposed to be a meat grinder module AP from Paizo. My characters came close to death plenty of times at first edition, but like that is like kind of my point of you have to find a system that works best for the story you're trying to tell. And, you know, not all systems are going to be as structured mathematically as Pathfinder. You know, but Pathfinder's going for a very specific type of storytelling. It is going for the high fantasy JRPG. I'm running Fist of Ruby Phoenix right now for a few friends. The level of BS, for those who don't know, it starts at level 11, goes all the way up to level 20. What you're doing at level 20 is so ridiculous. You are practically gods just trying not to mess up the like fabric of reality itself. I don't want to go into the spoilers, but it's a JRPG. You are meant to be walking gods at that level. Killable gods, mind you, because obviously you have to have a threat. But, you know, sometimes that storytelling often conflicts, and we kind of joked about this earlier with, you know, people porting in Cyberpunk into D&D because, you know, they didn't want to learn a new system kind of thing. You kind of have to either give up some constraints like that, you know, of either having to go learn a new system, which I get, very, very intimidating. Like I have a whole like 3 bookshelves now of just other games that are not like Pathfinder or D&D. You know, so some of them are like really, really cool and I really enjoy them. Like I've been reading through a new one called Die, which is from my one of my favorite comic book series, and the way they handle storytelling is much different than the way Pathfinder does. That's a very gritty game, but that's best representative of the setting they're going for. The setting they have is very, very grimdark. You know, I wouldn't go into a good example, because I think we all can relate to this, would be going into Warhammer expecting you're gonna see a good ending. Like, it's like you could go play the Tau, sure, but if you take any time to think about what the Tau are, it gets really, really sad really fast when you have to explain, like, no, the elders of the Tau are actively brainwashing the population. And even if you went with Commander Farside, he is currently having a little talk with Khorne with his new demon sword. And, you know, like, so even playing the good guys, like, it's like expecting to play the good guys in Warhammer. It's not going to happen. You play with the Imperium, you're the fascists. If you play with the Orcs, you are the dumb brute who just thought, hey, you want to know why the color purple is the sneakiest color? Have you ever seen a purple orc? Exactly. Yeah. You know, it's
the thing where it's specifically with that style of Tau are often reduced to being like the good guys by a lot of people, even inside the community. They're not. If you put them in literally any other sci-fi universe, they're the bad guys. If you put them into Star Trek, holy shit, they're definitely one of the higher threats in that universe.
That's such a great point, actually. When it comes to like clashing of like game mechanics, theme, and story, is if you took the Tau and put them into Star Trek, they're as bad as the Cardassians or the Borg or whatever you want to like throw them up against. But if you're trying to tell that story in Star Trek has happy endings at times. There are, you know, it is meant, Star Trek in its whole is trying to tell a story of the future where we have overcome basic problems and now we explore. We go find out what else is out there. How do we overcome different challenges? It's one of my favorite reasons why I love watching Star Trek. But if you're trying to use Star Trek's adventuring game to then tell a Warhammer story, you're gonna run into that issue really fast of the system not compensating for what you're trying to do. And if that is something you want to do, by all means, go do it. I wouldn't recommend it because at that point you have mechanics clashing with theme. One of the things we kept up in Pathfinder that we had to keep constantly talking about, especially on the developer side of it, is theme meshing with mechanics. We know in Pathfinder there are certain constraints that we cannot break. Just the way that either the math is set up, the way the story is set up. We know that there's 4 traditions of magic in Pathfinder. If we suddenly added a 5th one, we have a lot of explaining to do. You know, we know that there are certain math constraints, you know, like we're not, a level 5 adventurer is going to die to a level 10 level creature. It's not happening. And so you kind of have to play within those bounds, and something that if you are going into that style as either a GM or just somebody who wants to write narrative stories, something that I learned really, really early on is understanding when a system is failing to do what you want it to do, and when you should go probably look at what other systems can provide. It is genuinely one of my favorite parts about being a writer in the space is seeing how other people handle even similar concepts. I think all of us can name probably about 10 different fantasy TTRPGs, you know, between even like Tales of the Valiant to 13th Age to Dungeon World to Pathfinder, you know, so on and so forth. You get to kind of explore the different stories that you could tell. And with Beckfinder, we wanted to tell that story of what if there are threats so large in a fantasy universe, there was only one way to compensate for that, and it was really cool mechs, you know? But if you take that concept and, you know, let's say you just wanted to like pour everything with no additional work into a D&D, you know, like you bring a Thaco for Mechs, you know, kind of idea, you might find a little bit of a narrative issue, you know, with it, unless you go through some explanations of, we wanted these pilots to be more larger than life than most other stories would allow, you know. AD&D kind of conflicts with that, you know. AD&D is the grit of, I was definitely not around for the 80s, and a lot of stuff I know from AD&D has been told for me from other people, or most specifically my dad, who's been a giant TTRPG fan since like Redbox. Like, you had to sacrifice your constitution if you wanted to cast magic. Like, you got progressively weaker the longer an adventure day went on because you kept having to sacrifice your literal health. Pathfinder is not that. Pathfinder, you have spell slots. You have other things. You're not like actively losing HP to kind of like supplement the fact that you have 7 hit points at level 10. And a skeleton could just punch you and you die. Like, that's, you kind of play with this balance between those 3 of mechanics, theme, and storytelling. And one of the things, like, when we were talking at the beginning of, you know, seeing GMs create for 5e, you start to kind of notice that a little bit more. And obviously, I mean, no shade to anybody who ever writes for D&D 5e. You know, you go, girl. You got this. But sometimes 5e does conflict with certain themes and elements. It's the joke in a lot of communities of putting cyberpunk into D&D. it doesn't work well. I think this is why we've kind of started to see some like pure port 5es of different games into 5e. Like for me, the biggest fail in that sense, and it kind of was a joke for a while, was the Dark Souls 5e TTRPGs, because Dark Souls does not work with the 5e like mechanics very well. 5e is special just due to a lack of pure structure from a writer standpoint, but on top of all that, just Dark Souls is closer to AD&D than it is to 5e. 5e, especially a high level 5e, is so unlike Dark Souls. I've played Elden Ring. Let me rephrase that. I've died a lot in Elden Ring. I definitely know I'm not throwing out Meteor Swarm anytime soon. Like, at most, it caps out at level 6. At best. And all the monsters are CR 15, and you're just gonna get smacked a bunch until you get good. You know, it's one of those things with Mechfinder where we really want it, and just as we keep writing, because we love working on Pathfinder. It's our favorite thing to keep writing for. We're not going to stop anytime soon, unless a Pathfinder 3rd edition magically gets announced within the next year. I doubt it.
No,
no.
We got
not
good,
after all that remaster work.
Most of a decade probably going for it.
But it's something like you have to we think about when we're writing with Pathfinder. We know by level 15 you are expected to have these kinds of stories where you went from being at a circus and now you're playing our warriors trying to stop a curse, you know, or I think like even in Age of Ashes, like you went from a little town in Breach Hill to like taking on mega dragons, essentially, of just like taking on Dayhawk, which is an insane sentence because he's a god. And so, you know, it's knowing within the bounds of the story you're trying to tell. And with Mechfinder, we're trying to tell a very specific story of pilots that take on threats that are larger than life. Is one of my favorite types of stories to tell. It's in my opinion, some of our favorite stories of all time kind of fits in that realm. I'd kind of call John Wick relatively within that realm. By John Wick 4, it is a miracle he lives to see a 4th movie, okay? I've seen the blows he's taken, the stupid he's gotten away with. It's ridiculous, especially by the end of the 4th movie. In my opinion, John Wick, you see the progression. I think the clearest example of all time is the Luke Skywalker analogy. Level 1, you're shooting womp rats, you know, and by level 20, you're taking on Darth Vader and the Emperor. And if you really go into specifics, you want to talk about Legends stuff, on top of all that, Luke Skywalker is a god by the time he retires and ends out. Like, if we're talking pure Legends and we're not talking about the new canon, he's god. Like, the Star Killer in the Force Unleashed alone. I love the Force Unleashed games. Don't get me wrong. They hit that niche for me of being an uber powerful Force user. That being said, Force Unleashed 2 has the most weird Force logic of all time. So it's knowing that. It's knowing that Pathfinder tells that progression. It tells of, you know, being level 1, hitting womp rats, you know, I don't even remember the full stats off the top of my head just because it's been a while since I've seen 4. All the way to taking out Darth Vader, who's clearly a level 20 creature, like a level 20 monster. You know, actually, no, I'd put him actually closer to 16, Emperor level 20, because eventually you have to take on him. Not the point. You have that progression. But, you know, tell you something like Lord of the Rings and Pathfinder 2e, you're probably not going to get past level 3. Yeah. As much as I love Legolas and the like BS he kind of does, he's nowhere near what a level 10 archer that's a fighter can do. Nowhere near it, like at all. Like level 10 archer in Pathfinder is taking down ridiculous size stuff in terms of threats. And if any takeaway and like people should like really walk away with it on top of like go check out Mechfinder is knowing that as a developer, as a storyteller, as a GM, or as a just any type of try to tell a cohesive story through mechanics or through just literal storytelling, it's knowing the bounds of the universe you're setting yourself in, knowing that it's okay to have a limit as to what eventually is too ridiculous for a setting. I think there's even some stuff that's just too ridiculous for Pathfinder, you know, and you're gonna need a different setting. I don't know what that stuff is yet, because actually no, fighting kaiju in base Pathfinder is too ridiculous. You know, there are hazards. They don't even have stat blocks. They're that strong. But in Mechfinder, it became more realistic. You know, now you have a reason to compensate for all that, and so if you should take away, it's knowing where the lines are. It's knowing when something is far too unbelievable. You know, for us in Beckfinder, a dragon by itself is nothing. It's literally almost not even a threat to a mech. Mechs on average in Mechfinder are 50 feet tall. The tallest dragon, canonically, I think is 25 feet in Pathfinder. Like, that's a tiny creature. You can stomp on that. It'll be adorable. You know, it's just not happening. And so yeah, knowing the constraints, knowing what you're working with, and seeing if something else is out there that does what you want is the ultimate recommendation. Is what I always strive and try to get people to do as time goes on. And yeah, I really enjoy all of this, and like I love chatting with everybody here, because like especially you two who are very knowledgeable in Tabletop, especially when it comes to Warhammer. Like, I don't have as many Warhammer friends as I probably should, and yeah, it's genuinely a lot of fun to get to see what different people's perspectives are. And yeah, that's it for me. I really like games.
Yeah. Oh, trust me. I've been trying to get my sleeping schedule back in order recently. My fiance.
I give up on that.
Yeah. Well, my fiance's on grave shift, but I have a lot of daytime things I need to do, so I've been trying to switch. But then I literally a couple days ago, I was talking to a friend of mine who runs D&D 5e, and we were just talking about the differences between Pathfinder and D for like 3 hours, just talking about that. And yo, Dead Phoenix, sorry you missed the whole thing. But glad you're here at least. But yeah, I mean, I could talk endlessly. Tabletop theory is one of my favorite discussions to talk about, and I always have I try to be as open-minded towards different styles of gameplay as much as possible, because as a content creator, there's a lot of times I'll make like a build video and they're like, why don't you just make your video already including free archetype? I'm like, well, because not everyone uses free archetype, and because there's also society players, and so they'll need a character who can be built in a specific way. And while I don't necessarily build specifically society legal characters always, sometimes I'll take some uncommon features that they just can't select unless they have the points or they've done the modules for already. I make something that is as baseline as possible, and then I give options on top of that. And when it comes talking to, like, there's the whole debate about spell schools, removing them versus not removing them. Like, there's people it helps, and there's people it doesn't help. And that's something that I try to do my best, getting different perspectives. I mean, we've had Mark Seifter on Table Talk before, and that was a really elucidating conversation for sure.
That was a very fun one. Also, just nice to talk to the guy who is responsible for a decent chunk of some of my favorite fucking things ever in Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Where he's like, I've designed these classes, and I'm like, those are my favorite. Like, exactly. I had so much fun with these. Man, I'm so curious where I'm gonna land on the remaster scale, because as I like tabletop. I like to believe I know what I'm talking about when I talk about tabletop theory. However, saying that, I'm a guy who cannot learn rules by reading. I have to do it. Yeah. And I'm also a pure vibes man. I care about game feel. Like, that's the end all be all. In our current Pathfinder game, I am playing a tiefling wizard. So, my whole shit's changing. Like, I'm gonna have to remake from the ground up kind of deal.
Well, I mean, what's nice is, like, it's all still compatible. So even if you are like, I don't want to change a thing, you just be like, all right,
Yeah.
It's oh yeah, 100%. I am totally like super pumped for the remaster. Also because like, ooh, no, I'm curious to see what they alter. Some of the changes I think are really interesting. A flat-footed name change, I don't know.
Off guard is, in my opinion, off guard is so much better, especially if things don't have feet.
I guess that's fair. It's gonna be hard to unlearn the name
Oh,
flat-footed, and I prefer the
yeah.
name. That's
Try
I
writing
prefer
for
it.
it. Writing for
Yeah.
it every day and being like, "Hey, this needs to be flat." I mean, off guard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that one I can imagine. I want to redesign and like go all in on the remaster and see how I feel. Like also because my build for that character is very built around like evocation school, blaster caster, and specifically learning like his spells way quicker. So, what's my new shit gonna be like? I'm
I mean,
just
you can
very
still learn
curious and ready.
spells
Oh
normally.
yeah,
So
exactly. I'm just really curious how it's going to impact, and I'm excited to see because I really like change in my games. Whenever a new thing's coming for it, I'm like, ah, hell yeah, I'm right here for it.
yeah.
I always want to see a thing I enjoy develop and get stronger. Or in the other aspect, I really like seeing new people get a chance to work on a thing I enjoy. Because a thing I really love is feeling the hand of the author in whatever I'm doing. I want to feel like the person who wrote this gave a shit, which is why I'm now following the Kickstarter for Mechfinder, because you clearly give a shit, and so I can feel that, and I enjoy it more when I know the people involved enjoyed the work.
Yeah, and this is exactly like on the Battle Gamer channel in general. Like, I've said it before, Pathfinder. I have no loyalty to Pathfinder. Pathfinder is the game I enjoy the most, and it's the one I make the most content on. But I'm a tabletop player first and foremost, and so playing other games. I mean, we're about to end our live play season here in the next like 4 to 5 sessions, give or take. And we're gonna go to Vampire the Masquerade, and we're gonna do a whole 10 to 15 session of Vampire the Masquerade, and that's gonna be a lot of fun, and especially because I have an affinity for vampire stuff. I don't know what it is. I do that stuff very, very well. Tabletop is something that like I can't wait for it to evolve to the point of like indie, where people are making content about indie games. People are excited, willing to try new stuff out. A lot of it is just people got into 5th edition who were just unsure about tabletop in general, and so dipping their toes outside of that seems way more intimidating, because it was intimidating just to get into D&D 5e, so that feeling transfers over trying something else. But the more, especially content creators that start doing more indie stuff, that start talking about the many types of things, and like this channel where we bring people who are doing like, you're making a whole nother game. Like, it uses a lot of Pathfinder, true. It uses a lot of those kind of themes, kinda, but at the same time, it's just a whole nother beast. And that's something that I think is really cool. I think for people who like Lancer are gonna also like your content if they want more of a like a magic feel to the game, more of like a high fantasy feel to the game. I think that might suit some palates a little bit better. And so, you know, we're so thankful that you came along and talked with us about
So happy to be here. I'd always, you know where my DMs are. I'm always happy to come back to keep talking. This is genuinely one of my favorite things to do, is just sit down and ramble about game theory and game design, or just talk about Pathfinder in general. I don't know if we could tell from my background. I kind of there's one game that sticks out more than any other.
Yeah.
It's gotten so bad in certain friend groups, I could be completely disassociating, and the second I hear the word Pathfinder, it's sort of like, what?
Yeah.
And then so I'm known as like
man.
the Pathfinder guy in certain spaces, where it's just like, I love the game so much. I love writing for it. The Paizo staff, everyone I've interacted with, and I will say, like, talk with them in person, like Luis Loza, who I am jokingly mad at, because he gave, like, when they announced that a Dead God is like coming, it says I was just like, is it Pharasma? He's like, James, let me tell you a story. And I was like, oh, but it could be Rovagug. He's like, James, let me tell you a different story. And I'm just like, stop saying this. Just give me a name.
Yeah,
tell me who it is.
He's been going on to different channels. He was on another friend of the channel.
Gallant?
Yeah. Gallant
Goblin.
Gallant Goblin, yeah. Went on, talked about how Caden Kelly. I was like, if they take Caden Kelly, they're not doing it. They're definitely not doing it. But
money's on Pharasma. I'm putting money on Pharasma. She's going down.
I got my money on Nethys. It's my weird conspiracy theory. They're gonna kill off Nethys, and also what they're gonna do, Nethys dies same day. By the way, we've redesigned and updated Archive of Nethys and to a new site, new host. That is my conspiracy theory. I firmly believe this. I would put money on
that. That
this.
is deep. All right, that is a very interesting theory.
I'm prescribing to the Torag. I feel like they want to start taking dwarves in a different direction, and I feel like removing
everybody trying to kill Torag. He's such a good guy.
I know, and that will just make it hurt.
No. You gotta just kill Saren to get the critical role.
Yeah.
That's what our friend keeps saying. Like, we have a friend who keeps saying it's probably gonna be Saren because the critical role.
Yeah, there he is right now, yeah.
There he is.
So, I mean...
I love how everybody has a different god that they're like, I got money on this one.
You know the crazy part is, well, they added the plane of metal, and so they added, like, Laudanum or whatever the god's name is. And I'm making an alchemist dwarf character who... Before, I was just like, the great thing about alchemists is they do the same things as magic without magic. But then they introduced this god of, like, alchemy. And I'm like, well, now I got a multi-class archetype into cleric and take the metal spells. And they just like, is it magic? Is it alchemy? Who knows? It's kind of being blended together now. And I think that that concept is really cool. Also, that character is a smoke soul dwarf. And mixing that with the feature they have where they can increase the flat check to hit them while they're concealed by smoke or mist, plus the mist form elixir that makes you covered in mist all the time, is just... It's a lot of fun. It's a really cool character, and I'm super excited to play. We're going to be doing that for Kingmaker. That's my character. And, yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? That's Pathfinder, where you can just talk about just the most out there thing. And I'm so happy that we have a game where we're talking about all kinds of characters, and we're not talking about the same 3 classes using the same 3 features over and over and over like you do in D&D 5e. Because as much as D&D 5e, you can do like kind of whatever. If the GM sets it up for you, any character can work, right? But then everyone's just like, but what about Paladin? Because it's just objectively stronger than every other class. And
it is
I'm running Oath of Vengeance Paladin.
My man.
I refuse. I actually broke my oath once, and I was like, Oathbreaker is really fun until you hit level 7, when then all undead and fiends get buffs around you, and then you're in the spoiler Underdark for a little bit, which has lots of dead things. I then swapped back to my oath.
Yeah,
but Oath of Vengeance is like it's mega good.
Yeah,
so
just
good.
advantage for 1 minute against the creatures. It's just like it's Hunter Mark on steroids. And if you get Hunter's Mark!
Yeah, I made some boss fights really easy. Every, like, main boss fight, I ran up, Illithid power crit, max level smite, and then it's just Karlak comes jumping by to finish the job. That's every fight it's fantastic. You know what? That's one thing I adore about Pathfinder. Because, like, I encountered this recently where some friends of mine they do, like, some public play D&D stuff at our local, like, Warhammer store that also has some D&D tables in the back that you can rent out. Apparently the guy who runs them is, like, really good. He's a great DM, and I'm like, damn, I would like to sit in for a couple sessions, play some good old D&D with some good old friends of mine I haven't hung out with for a bit. And I was like, I have this idea for Pathfinder. How can I make this work for D&D? I have to gut everything interesting about it and then ask the DM if I can make this aesthetically. because I have this idea for a summoner martial artist that is essentially Talion from Shadow of Mordor, but with barehanded fighting, because I really love the idea of tandem fighting with a ghost that like pops out of your body, like parries an attack. Like I really like
cool.
that specific aesthetic with like the devotion idol.
Yeah.
And I was like, how can I make that for D&D 5e? It's like, yeah, just monk, and then flavor abilities different. It's like, damn, that's cool.
Astral Soul technically could do it. I know that's a little bit more of like a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure thing, but like, so is Summoner already in Pathfinder. So I'd be like, there is some. You're right. There is some weird like workarounds you kind of have to do when it comes to D&D.
It's also just nice to see that everybody has their own. Like every time you talk about like Pathfinder, like oh yeah, we might start this game, and someone's like, yeah, I have this like build I've been thinking about running for like a good while. It's like I want to find a good moment to break out this one character idea, and it's always a different class, different archetype, different style. It's always everybody can really flesh out their play style, which is like
you could have 6 dwarven fighters, and each of them feel completely unique from the other, and that is insane to me, and it's so good. And then when you factor in archetypes, it gets just even worse. Like in terms of like how many weird builds you can get into. Like my favorite, like I haven't had a chance to play it, but I really want to do this. Is called the Ultimate Patron. I have a more adult version called Mommy Give Me Stuff, and basically what it does is you go Witch, Pact Master, and then Living Vessel, and all that does is just like it's just mommy giving you toys as you level up, and so yeah, you could like totally especially with the archetypes, but even just you grab just the core rulebook alone, you get some really, really interesting builds. I think with the remaster, from what we've seen, it's only gonna get bigger. They said they're adding in a new concept. The Witch rework so far, from what I've seen, looks Coven Knife is gonna become one of my favorite feats for the Witch. It's just such a simple thing of just turning a knife into a magic into a wand, but is it just such a good idea? It looks great. James Case, every time they've talked about it, it's just been an absolute hype machine for the Witch. I trust Paizo explicitly on almost 99% of things. Anytime I'm like, ooh, that kind of sounds like a rough idea. Nope, they've blown me away. Whatever my expectation is, I'm just like, I know I'm gonna probably enjoy whatever the final product is. And everything they've said so far, from like even small things like adding mobility items to the core, like into the remaster, is so nice. I see somebody in your chat, but they nerfed casters.
They're just being facetious, but yeah.
I know they are. From what I've seen from the feats that like the feat names of some of the stuff, like wizard, like there was this really cool one. Like from what I understood, from what I think it's gonna try to do is like you could draw like a sigil on the ground that like gives a radiating aura that buffs other stuff. Like the witch feat that let you, as a reaction, add in a spell shape to somebody else's casting a spell. I'm just like, I'll take cancer nerf. I'll take it. Give me 2 less damage if I get that feat. Give me that one.
Holy shit! Wait a sec. Right, my tone might not sell this because I just speak in this same tone. My profile picture is my emotion right now. They're nerfing cantrips, whatever. They're gonna make like spellcaster class feats interesting. That was my biggest hang up with wait. Wizard and Sorcerer. Like, man, these class feats are fucking boring.
I feel you on that. So I agree with you very, very much. I want to see if I can find the exact moment if you just give me like one short second. I know where it is on the Paizo stream. I just have to find it. But there is genuinely a really interesting nope, this is PaizoCon. Gen Con 2023? Yeah, okay, cool. I forgot what years were. That's on me. But from the there is a feat where it's like literally as a reaction, if you are a witch, you get a feat that lets you add in a spell shape degree onto somebody else's spell. It is so good. Okay, hold on. Okay, James, Case, I love you. Please get to the feats. Okay, Coven spell. As a 12th level feat, as a reaction, you rhyme with your allies' incantations or echo their movements, linking your magic to empower their spell one of two ways. If their spell deals damage, you grant that spell a status bonus to damage equal to its rank, or if the spell doesn't have a spell shape effect already applied, you add it to the effect.
Super good.
Holy shit! Yeah,
we could talk endlessly about Pathfinder.
Yeah, you have time constraints, so I gotta go back to writing.
No worries. I mean, going a little bit over, we're just giving people a little bit more, more bang for their buck. Definitely in the future. I mean, we've had Paul, the Rules Org guy, come on, and multiple times. So. Definitely, we'll keep you in mind. And before we let everyone go, big thing next week, we will be having another guests on, and we also happen to be streaming at the same time as the new class reveal. So it's gonna be a little bit of a watch party as we're gonna see the 2 new classes. And then I get to work my butt off the next day making content on the playtest that's coming out. I get it's just oh, cool. And now I have to immediately work my butt and work my ass off to get 2, maybe 3 videos out on the new playtests, my thoughts on them and everything. And probably a news piece later the week when everyone hates the playtest. Because everything's a little janky, because no one understands how playtests work. And then we get to talk about it the next week as well. So it's just free content for me. It's great. So it's a big one next Thursday. Be on TableTalk, the 31st, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time to 6 p.m. Also, hey, if you ever need someone, once you start getting your content more officially put out and everything, let me know. I'll push your content on the channel. I'll make videos for Mechfinder, and I'll hype you guys up. I'm more than happy to do that for you guys.
Thank you.
So the channel's also been growing ridiculously fast recently as well. Our subs suddenly doubled. Our daily subs doubled recently.
Good content. I'm just saying it's good content. I'm not arguing with that.
Yeah, that's true. Well, the Lancer crew. The Lancer community found my channel finally and started jumping on. And now, I'm been getting, several hundred views a day just from Lancer videos alone. It's been great. So, we got a lot of stuff coming up. Kinesis build when? Good question, actually. I have the bite-sized Kineticist tomorrow. And then I'm done with Kineticist flat. And then I can start doing some other stuff. So a Kinesis build will probably be really good for the algorithm right now, so that's probably in my near future as well. Be on the lookout. Gosh, so much is going on. So yeah, stay tuned. Lots of great stuff. Join the Discord, linked in the description, or below on Twitch if you guys are watching on Twitch. And as well, you can find James on Twitter and the many links that have been linked here today. Anything you want to leave us off with before we head out?
I'll give the name for one more spoiler for Mechfinder.
Okay,
if that's okay.
Sure.
I hope you guys like Power Rangers, because this one's called the Party Mech.
Oh, you got a Megazord style mech.
I'm not saying any more than that until we're off stream. I will tell you about it after.
What about you, Glue Boy? Any? I know you got some fun stuff coming up here soon.
I have so much, because it's you work after TableTalk for the next foreseeable, I don't fucking know, month or something is I rest my voice for like 3 or 4 hours and then record another part of a 40k iceberg I've been making. If y'all like iceberg content, swing by my channel, Glue Boy on YouTube. It's all about 40k, and it's an iceberg I'm making myself because the ones I found online weren't good enough, and I'm too into this universe. Other than
Your
that,
first video did really well.
It did, and the deeper it gets and the more theory and like hidden lore stuff, it's gonna get better and probably do better. But I'm also next week, aiming for next week. I've put the goal in there, so I'll achieve it. I'm gonna release my first video that is not 40k related. Specifically, it's something I've hyped up on this channel before, and so I'll reveal it on here rather than my own channel. It's gonna be finally my video of title being Anima Beyond Fantasy is the best tabletop system you should never play. I adore that game so much, but it's got problems. I got a lot of stuff in mind for it, so stay tuned for that. Other than that, just if you like 40k lore, go check me out. I think my videos are fun.
I do too. I think I like your videos a lot. They give a lot of humor to what should be a pretty humorous setting. Honestly.
40k is so grimdark it gets goofy, and I don't trust people who take 40k too seriously. It is the dumbest thing I've ever read, and I enjoy it so much.
That's great. Yeah, so that's gonna be it for us. Oh boy, like I'm about to end stream, and I'm already like, okay. And now the rest of the week starts from here till next Thursday. It's a lot, but you know, you can catch us on YouTube, on the Discord. I know James has just joined the Discord, so you know,
I'll be there.
Keep it kosher. Don't bother him too much, but you know, if you have any questions, you can ask them there. You can find James. You can find all of us actually on Twitter as well. So if you want to see what we talk about regularly, I try my best anyway to make some content every day on that platform. And things are starting to balance out, so hopefully videos will continue as normal very soon. But that's gonna be it for us. So I guess we'll go ahead and say goodnight.
Good night.
Night.